feels like something broke down. They said they budgeted for this. They acted so casual. It sounds like something went sideways, and they didn't explain why. They haven't been really like negotiating through the press. But I can only think. You mentioned who's the point man on this. Parag. He's tough. Well, it could be Parag. It could be John Lynch. The Niners as an organization are really tough. And if they're really trying to play hardball with Nick, there's one thing you can bring up. What is it?
The injuries.
The injuries. Nick, you're an injury risk. Nick, you missed a season in 2020 with a torn ACL. You missed a season in 2018 at Ohio State with a torn stomach, and you tore another ACL in high school. Like, you're an injury risk. This is factual. And we have to take that into consideration. We can't just overlook that because you were the defensive player of the year. Because when you don't get hurt, you're great. Knowing the Niners, they probably said that to him. I'm just guessing. And knowing Nick Bosa, he didn't take that well. I think if the Niners tried that, then Nick Bosa would say, all right, well, I'm offended. And now I'm not going to do you any favors. It's going to be 100% on my terms. And I'll sit out multiple weeks to prove it. That would make sense to me if that happened. That's the only thing that can actually explain this to me. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a high stakes poker game of chicken. And who's going to blink first? And it's probably going to be the Niners. And it's probably going to be in the 11th hour. He's probably going to get signed Friday. And they're going to try to throw him out there on Sunday, and then cross your fingers he doesn't get hurt. So that would be my guess. I do think they'll get it done. I do think they'll wind up caving. But what also, as far as you said, what changed? The only thing I can see changing, Grant, because like what happened in the midst of these negotiations? The 49ers went through a PR situation by having to trade Trey Lance and don't look particularly good in the process of doing it. Regardless of what you think of Trey Lance, even if you like him or didn't like him, they still sold really low. So they didn't get a lot of value, and they wound up trading him to the Dallas Cowboys. And who knows? Maybe the agent read that and said, you know what? They're not going to trade two picks that they made in the top three within 2 weeks of each other. It's disaster PR. So now we're just going to ask for the moon. Now we're going to want every penny guaranteed. Now we want sort of 110 million guaranteed. We want 150 million guaranteed. I mean, I don't know. Also, all I'll say is this, is if on the back end we find out this is over, it doesn't matter if he signs today, tomorrow, or in 2 weeks. The Niners will look really bad if it was over a couple $1 million. If it's like, okay, they settled and it's like 145 million guaranteed, then at least you know that it was just, they were asking for the moon, and it was, what I mean? If it's just a couple $1 million, either way, they could look really, really bad, really cheap to make it go this long. But you got to think that they knew this was coming, Grant. They gambled on, he gambled on himself, and he won. He won the Defensive Player of the Year. He had 18.5 sacks. He stayed healthy. He was absolutely dominating. He lifted the entire team, and now you got to pay him. As simple as that. And to me, I really believe the timing matters. So it's like you got to pay him or you got to move on, but you can't just sit there and hold him for 8 weeks as he sits out. I mean, that to me is just would sabotage the season and sabotage their chances dramatically, because it would probably almost guarantee that they wouldn't play that championship game at home if they can get that far.
All right, let me come back to my point real quick, though. It's just a theory. But if it's possible, if the Niners tried to play hardball and they brought up this point, like kind of ambushed with Nick Bosa at the negotiating table, like Nick says, I want something outrageous. And the Niners are like, can't believe it. Okay, we got to bring out the big guns. We think you're an injury risk. If that's the first time they broach that subject, that just feels like a really messy way to go about things. Like if you think he's an injury risk and you're uncomfortable paying him what you think he's going to eventually ask, man, you got to trade him. Just like you traded Buckner. It's too much for one person. You don't fully believe. You got some questions. You got some reservations. Then you have that conversation in March internally and trade him before you get to the negotiating table. It just feels messy. And it feels like they made this, in trying to play hardball, they made him more expensive. That's the way it's like they're going to lose this. They're going to lose this. If he's not out there week one, they lose.
Yeah. The timing is terrible. They can't, look at it this way. They can't win. How do they win? They sign him, and if it's just marginally more, they're going to look. Yeah, they're going to save money, but they're going to look really cheap. If they sign him and it's massive amounts more, then they don't have him really 100% for week one, and they're probably kissing off Ayuk in the offseason. If they don't sign him, and they trade him now, even if they got some awesome package, if it's draft picks, they lose because it's they're in their Super Bowl window. You don't trade a superstar player for picks inside your Super Bowl window. And if they get some great players, they lose because those players don't know their system, and by the time they're up to speed, the season's 6 weeks old. So I mean, it's like they only, as this thing is dragged out, they don't have a way to look good. They really don't.
No, and I think that's again why we're seeing Nick Bosa being so part of the reason we're seeing Nick Bosa being so staunch. I'm not moving an inch for you. Oh, we're $2 million apart. Fine, $2 million. What's that? One of the best parts, I'm going to start cursing a little bit, and I know we're simulcast, but one of the best parts of Goodfellas is that little interlude where he talks about, something happens you couldn't make. Fuck you, pay me. That's what Nick Bosa is saying. Oh, you didn't have it? Oh, it's a lot of money? It's more than you. Fuck you, pay me. And if you don't like it, I'm not playing week one. So I don't know, man. It seems, you said the word acrimonious? Yeah, it seems acrimonious to me. That's my best guess. Like right now. Like it's been acrimonious. I don't know.
Well, I'll say this, though. Lynch either knew it was going to be acrimonious or because he laid down the ground rules early on. We're not going to talk about you guys. You're not going to talk about us. And at least the Niners are holding up their end of the bargain, and it appears that Bosa's side has as well. Now, what does that mean?
Yeah, but
I usually think that these sides are having a productive exchange of ideas and working towards a positive conclusion, but it hasn't come together. And now it's September the 4th, and the opener is 6 days away.
Kyle Shanahan has kept his mouth shut. Whenever he's asked about it, he's like, yeah, I'm not surprised. This is nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Lynch is different. Lynch is like, earlier he said, yeah, he's not here, but I want him here 3 weeks before season starts. Well, that didn't happen. And he was asked about it after the last preseason game. He's like, are you cool with this? Kind of like how Kyle's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Lynch is like, no, I'm uncomfortable. This is not what I wanted. So that's different. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like Lynch is giving us more. Yeah.
And Wilkes has been kind of with Kyle. Like, I just work here. I don't know. I'm not. It's above my pay. Didn't he say it's above my pay grade or something?
Right.
Like that?
No, Lynch is the one guy who said like, no, this is not what we want. This is not how we. This is not the type of precedent we want to set. We're proud of the fact that we don't do this. Lynch. So I don't know. I feel like he's the general manager. He's responsible for this, and it's Kyle can shrug his shoulders and be like, oh no, but Lynch can't. And this already, like any games he misses is going to make this front office look bad. So they might as well just cave.
What'd you make of Kyle's statement the other day when he's like, he was asked like literally within the last 4 or 5 days, are you surprised by this? He's like, no, this is pretty much what I expected. So maybe, if that's true and that's an authentic comment, then he expected this thing to basically go the entire deal all the way down to the wire. I mean, that's what you expected. I mean, that's just bizarre that, then the dialogue that they've described this negotiation doesn't really fit if you thought this was going right down to the wire, unless you believe that that's just Bosa's agent's reputation. And I don't know his reputation.
I really respect John Lynch. Like him personally, respect him, but he doesn't look good right now because of what he said. Last year he said, oh, we budgeted for this. Oh, we budgeted for this. Like, right. Oh, we're going to get this taken care of. Like, yeah, but it seems like you didn't. It seems like you should have had this all figured out. He was a defensive player of the year. You should have been able to figure out he's going to need a little bit more than the last defensive player, like a little bit more than TJ Watt. You should have been able to figure that out. And you're like haggling? I don't know. It looks messy. It looks messy and unprofessional. So they could sign him tonight and get it right in at the buzzer, but saving that, starting to look really messy and unprofessional.
One other thing that, to me, if you're going to send a consistent message, you sent a message to your fans when you went with Brandon Allen as the third string quarterback over Trey Lance. What was that message? The message was that incremental advantages in the right now mean more to us because we're all about the W and we're all about winning in 2023, this upcoming season. Well, if you know, that's great if you want to be like, hey, they didn't have time to develop this young, talented quarterback. They had to go with Brandon Allen as the third guy because they're all in on winning this year, and he can help them win this year. And even
Psych, we're trading Bosa.
Yeah, even their announcers at different points have been like, oh, they're who would you rather have in the fourth quarter of a trailing game, Trey Lance or Brandon Allen? Wouldn't you rather have Brandon Allen? Okay, so if everything's about this year and winning right now, then you got to get Bosa signed.